What's up, duelists? Welcome in all new subscribers from yesterday's little extravaganza on the MBT subathon. Thank you guys so much for your support. We are well on our way to 10K now. If you guys want to, of course, help out if you aren't already subscribed, now would be a great time. You could be part of the first 10K. I might do a giveaway for the once we hit 10K. I'm thinking about doing a giveaway, actually, a pretty cool one. So maybe we hit 10K. Maybe I do a little giveaway. I don't know. Maybe we make it happen. Anyway, I get a lot of questions about quick draw and is it good? I guess that's the real question. That's the only question. I say a lot of questions, but it's a lot of the same question. And I think it is. I think one of the biggest changes that we have to make to this deck is improving its going second game plan. So in this list, this is not the most tuned list, but this is similar to the lists that I have been playing. I have been enjoying triple Soul Exchange. And the reason I've been liking 3 Soul Exchange and no Hamster is because I think Hamster is pretty bad going second. And I think Soul Exchange is pretty crazy going both first and second. Hamster sometimes is great, obviously. And this deck could totally play Hamster. But I'm leaning more towards not playing as much Avarice stuff and just playing more of a big monster command the board type game. Whether or not this game plan is more fragile, more aggressive, more whatever, it's kind of up for interpretation. But I do think that if this deck is moving forward at all, it's going to have to incorporate some sort of way to help it going second, which I think Soul Exchange is kind of the perfect fit for this deck. Not only can you use it with Monarchs, Light and Darkness, Titanial to help fix your hand, but you can also use it with Malicious if you play the hero package, which I think you should. And you can use it with Gores, Trag, and Quick Draw as well in a pinch. So I think that Soul Exchange is definitely the way to improve this deck going second moving forward. Another card I really like for this deck is Phoenix Wing Windblast, especially in these hero versions, because you have a lot of ways to get that extra discard piece or that extra material that you need. In the sideboard, I've got a lot of my favorite cards for this deck. There's a couple of them that obviously the numbers could change. One thing I've been thinking about is cutting the Mirror Force from the main. It's a card that's underperformed for me a lot. And cutting the Call of the Haunted from the side. This card is mostly there for helping deal with deck dev post board, but even against deck dev, one Call of the Haunted is not really doing that much in this deck because what am I doing? Calling back a Cyber Valley? Let's be real, it's not very useful when I'm under deck devastation virus. Let's be real. So I've been thinking about 2 Royal Decrees as a way to combat deck dev because that is a death sentence for this deck. I think it's part of the reason I'm probably not bringing this deck to the Nationals, the NAWCQ, and it's part of the reason why I think this deck really struggles right now. It's just the Blackwing matchup in general, and that's the most popular matchup. So Soul Exchange definitely improves that matchup, but yeah, I think that matchup is tough. Sideboard cards, I do like Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer in this deck. I actually like it more than I like a lot of other cards in this deck because sometimes you'll just have a turn where you set Raikou, next turn you Raikou pop their thing, summon Kaiku, and it's just you cascade your advantage from there. It's one of the easiest decks to resolve a Kaiku in. You have Wind Blasts, you have Caiuses, you have all sorts of ways to keep the board clear, Debris Dragon, Nuke, etc. So once you can keep the board clear, Kaiku is really easy to force through. Vanity's Fiend, this is a card I like when you're playing Soul Exchange, particularly. Same thing with Dark Dust Spirit. Triple DD Crow, when you play these sort of big anchor monster style strategies, which is what this deck is kind of turning into. It's we summon a Monarch, we summon a Titanial, and then we back it up, kinda, or we just force a lot of resources from the opponent with that monster, and then we summon another one. I think Crow is one of the best ways to defend that, because a lot of the times your opponent's synchro plays, in order to defeat your big monster, involve the graveyard, and DD Crow attacks the graveyard, so it covers your bases really, really well. And then of course you got to play Cyber Dragon. Extra deck is fairly straightforward. Got to have one of the fusions for future fusion. That's pretty much it. I've got a replay for you guys. This replay is versus random username. This is against Vayu Turbo, which is a deck that isn't as popular as Blackwings, but the matchup is kind of similar. It's kind of different. Game 1, we definitely break, which is one of the issues with Quick Draw in general, but particularly in this list, and it's part of the reason why we play 40 cards, or 45 cards, is because I want to break less, but hey, it happens to the best of us, even when you when you mitigate it. So yeah, we open Stratos Malicious, which is awful, and we open Titanium, which is awful, and we open Debris with no targets, which is awful. So my game plan for this game is actually to lose, but to lose in such a way that he thinks I'm playing a different deck, so that I can mix him up in sideboarding. I activate Heavy Storm, I set Mirror Force, and I pass. He flips Hamster, and I'm okay, Deep Prison Hamster, that's usually Vayu Turbo. But we can find out for sure by figuring out the Raikou situation. attacking the Raikou, seeing what he mills. He sets another monster, so I'm like, okay, it could be quick draw still. I summon Stratos and I don't search. This is step number 1 in order to conceal information. I want to make sure he doesn't know what the fuck I'm doing. Like, I want to make sure he doesn't know I have Malicious in my deck. I want him to think that all of my heroes are in my hand and that all of them are normal summons. So, yeah, that's my game plan here. I attack the monster, I pass the turn, he flips his Raikou, he targets the back row, mills 3, reveals Gale Armageddon, and I've gotten pretty much everything I need from this game. He's going to summon his Armageddon, he's going to make Goyo steal my Stratos, but he gives us a little bit of extra information telling us he is not playing heroes himself. When he attacks over the Stratos, he doesn't search. So, we know he's not playing any hero monsters. I don't know, that could be useful information for game 2, potentially. Here he goes for Trap Dust Shoot, and I concede. And normally I don't condone concessions here, but what he's going to do is he's going to take my Debris Dragon, and then what the hell am I going to do, right? Like, I Future Fusion, I send Mali Treeborn. I can't even send Dandelion because Stratos is my only elemental hero, and Gaia takes specifically an elemental hero, so we can't send Malicious as a material for Gaia. Yeah, no, we're just screwed. We send Malicious Treeborn, and we just die on the way back. So there's no reason to reveal this information. We just go ahead and concede, and I took a screenshot of my sighting patterns for you guys. So I sighted in, this is a misclick, by the way. I didn't sight out the Raikou. I sighted out the enemy controller. I sight out Mirror Force, enemy controller, and Pot of Avarice in almost every single matchup. So that's like part of the reason I've been thinking, like, okay, I'm just going to go Royal Decrees over the Mirror Force and the Call of the Haunted moving forward. But yeah, I think that those 3 cards are the easiest cuts. And then Raikou is pretty good going first, but going second, you definitely want to cut it out. And then Quick Draw, I just cut one going first because, again, if he does decide to bring in Royal Oppression for Miracle Fusion, that type of thing, I don't really want to play into it too heavily, but there's a chance that it's fine because going first, having Quick Draw, Dandy going first is good. So it's possible I should have cited out something like Battle Fader going first. So that's some sideboarding stuff that I hadn't really thought of. This game is very, very, very complex, and it's part of the reason I wanted to get you guys this replay. We go first, and we open up Future Fusion Dust Shoot, which is normally a slam dunk, but in this case, you don't activate the Future Fusion. So there's a couple of reasons why you don't activate the Future Fusion here. Number 1, he still doesn't know what we're playing, so I want him to mess up his opening as a result. Number 2, Future Fusion makes my Tragodia weaker, and it also sets up Dandy tokens, which means I can't even activate my Tragodia. So it cuts off my Tragodia almost completely. I don't really want that to happen. I want my Tragodia to be live here. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to Dust Shoot him, take his defensive options, force him to play an offensive option into our Tragodia, get max value out of my Tragodia, and then later in the game I'll go for Future Fusion and set up for, like, either Titanium or whatever. And then the third option is we don't yet know if we want a Gaia or an Absolute Zero. Like, we don't yet know if this game's going to be a Treeborn game or if it's going to be a I need a Dandelion in the Grave ASAP game. And the best way to have that information is by resolving Dust Shoot first. So for those 3 reasons, you don't actually slam Future Fusion on the table here. As weird as it is, as weird as it may sound, there's no reason to activate it right now. Plus, we have an out for Royal Oppression and Phoenix Wing, so if he does reveal Royal Oppression, we can always Phoenix Wing it and then resolve our Future Fusion through that. So we Dust Shoot the opponent here, and we reveal his hand. So his hand is very interesting. It has Gores, it has Plague, and it has Raikou as our targets. So Gores is one of those cards that's like so bad when it's known about. It is so unbelievably bad when I know about it. So it's definitely not the pick, right? Because I can just play around it for the rest of the game. And that's kind of how this deck works in general. You can afford to play around Gores the whole game anyway. And that's part of the reason I love Soul Exchange in this deck, is because oftentimes you're not even attacking because you don't need to. You attack once you go for game or once you have the confirm, the kill confirm, but you don't really need to be attacking every single turn with this deck, which is one of the reasons why I think this deck is so powerful. Anyway, we Trap Dust Shoot, we reveal his hand, I'm like, okay, the Plague, also a mulligan. Gores, mulligan. Plague, also a mulligan. Doesn't do anything on its own. Let's just take the Raikou. Let's take his opening. Let's take his engine card. Whatever. And we just need to navigate bottomless Dust Shoot Solemn. So what I'm thinking here is he's not going to set the Solemn because of Gores, but we don't know that for sure. We don't know that for sure. He might do it. He might do it. Who knows? He might be scared of like Heavy Storm or some shit, or he might use it as a bait for Heavy Storm. Who knows? We know he's going to set the Dust Shoot for sure. So we know one of the set cards is going to be Dust Shoot. We know his other set cards either going to be Bottomless or Solemn, but I'm pretty sure he's not setting both of them. At the very least, he's definitely not setting both Solemn and Bottomless because he wants his Gores to be live. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be Bottomless, but there's a way to check for it, so we'll get to that in a second. So yeah, Dust Shoot, take the Raikou, and then pass the turn. He shuffles it back into the deck. He sets 2 back row, as we predicted, and he passes a turn back to us. We pick up Soul Exchange. So now we go to the main phase. and he doesn't dust shoot us right away. So I'm like, what the fuck is he thinking? Like, that's crazy. I would always shotgun dust shoot here because it's obviously set. Like, you're not saving anything by having this dust shoot set. Like, I'm not going to blind Typhoon when I know about your dust shoot, A. And then B, there's no reason not to get the perfect information here. So a bit of a mistake on his part. We go ahead and activate the Future Fusion. And this is our solemn check. Because we don't have, like, Heavy Storm, something like that, we're going to activate Future Fusion. At this point in time, he thinks we're playing Heroes. That's basically what he thinks. So you should always Solemn Judgment the Future Fusion from Heroes, because it means not only am I getting an absolute 0 in 2 turns, which he can't deal with his hand, but I'm also setting up my grave for future Miracle Fusions. So it's a 2-for-1, basically, at the very least. So he should definitely Solemn it if it's set. And because he doesn't Solemn it, it confirms that his other set, this middle set, is Bottomless Trap Hole. So I know the Solemn is still in his hand, which we had kind of postulated would be the case just because he has Gores. But at the same time, it's like, we knew that this was going to be the case. Or now we know for sure, basically, yeah. So yeah, we send Malicious and we send Treeborn. Another reason we do this to send the Malicious and Treeborn instead of Dandelion or not another reason, but the reason we do this instead of sending Dandy plus Stratos is because we have Soul Exchange. So now at any point of the game, we can Mally, Soul Exchange out Titanial, and dominate the board. Titanial is the card in this matchup. Against Vayu Turbo, Titanial stops everything. It's like undoubtedly just the best card in this matchup. It stops Raikou, it stops Hamster because Hamster gets Raikou, it stops D-Prison, which they play like 3 of, it stops Caius, it stops Brain Control, it stops Dark Armed, it stops Bionic, it stops Dark End, it stops everything. Like, if you can set up Titanial, you shut off, it's almost 50% of their deck that you shut off, which is crazy. This is like, it's one of the best cards in the matchup. I don't want to say it's an FTK because they can definitely play through it, but it is one of the hardest cards for the deck to deal with effectively. They usually have to waste cards on it, and that's usually very good for you. So what he does here is he dust shoots on Resolution, and he makes a huge mistake. This is like one of the biggest mistakes. He takes Tragodia. Why are you taking Tragodia? Why take Tragodia here? You die to this Titanial. The Titanial beats you, like, straight up. He thinks, oh, I have Bottomless. I'm fine. But I know your back row is Bottomless now, right? And I have Phoenix Wing to take out your Bottomless. And if that's the case, I can just bring out Malicious, Soul Exchange your monster. You can never commit to the board. I'll double Tribute Titanial. I could even Tribute set the Titanial. I don't even need to summon it into Bottomless if I don't want to Phoenix Wing it. So it's just, I'm guaranteedly going to hit this Titanial at some point. It's going to happen. Another thing that happens is, like, okay, let's say you don't commit into the Soul Exchange. Eventually, I'm going to summon Absolute Zero. What are you going to do? You're going to Bottomless it? Okay. Then I go Treeborn plus Mally, and then I'm able to summon the Titanial. And not only that, but Titanial beats Gores. I can just attack with littler monsters, and if you ever summon your Gores, Titanial can run it over. So this Titanial is going to end up beating him, and this is a huge mistake here. A lot of times people have this idea in their mind, like, oh, Titanial's a brick. Titanial's not a good card in hand. But because we have this new technology, this new Soul Exchange, Titanial's actually fucking insane. Like, it's actually really good to have in my hand here. Like, it's definitely the win con, and he misidentifies that. Here, I want to set Wind Blast, and because he misidentifies the situation, I'm sure he has because he dust shooted me and he took the Trag instead of the Titanial. I'm going to set Wind Blast and not Torrential. I'm pretty sure he's not going to summon into Torrential anyway because we have Soul Exchange. And I do want to have Phoenix Wing to be able to target down that Bottomless Trap Hole in my next draw phase because I know he's not going to commit into the Soul. So yeah, he draws Burial, which, I mean, obviously does nothing here. He sets his Solemn, and we know that that's the Solemn. So in the draw phase, we are going to go for Phoenix Wing. And because we drew a second Soul Exchange, this is even more perfect because we can pitch one of them and he'll not know about the second one. So we activate Phoenix Wing on our next draw phase after this one because he goes Drago again. We activate Phoenix Wing in the draw phase, pitch Soul Exchange, target his Bottomless Trap Hole. He Solemns this, so he drops 4,000 life points, making his Gores really, really bad. Then we special summon out the Absolute Zero. He's forced to Bottomless this, and then Treeborn comes out, and we can banish Mally and special that and Tribute Summon Titanial and get it down under Torrential, under Bottomless, and we are just crushing now. Because we have Titanial in play, we picked up DD Crow, which is the perfect way to stop anything that's going to answer our Titanial, and we can just pass. We don't even need to commit the Torrential because A, he knows about it, so I don't really want to play it into like a Space Typhoon or a Heavy Storm. Most specifically, Space Typhoon, Raikou, or Heavy Storm, that sort of thing. Maybe not Heavy Storm. It's more specifically the spot removal. I don't want to be forced to like Titanial negate spot removal here. Anyway, he draws Book of Moon, another card that Titanial shuts off, which is really good for us. And he has to commit. He has to commit because eventually he's just going to be draw discarding, and that's just going to favor us. We draw Raikou, and I'm like, okay, there's a chance he drew Torrential, but it's a lower chance. I'm going to set the Raikou. Maybe he drew Torrential, who knows? I should have probably brought back Treeborn Frog as a Torrential check, but I figured it was the same as just doing this, more or less, except I'd have a... No, it's probably better to bring back Treeborn Frog as a Torrential check, but I figured, like, I'll just Gamba. I'll just Gamba and set the Raikou and hope he doesn't have it. It's definitely better to bring back Treeborn there, though. Anyway, he summons Greffer, pitches the Plague, sends Vayu, and then attacks into our set monster. And here I'm like, oh, that's good. We can pop the back row now and not have to worry about it. And it's Deep Prison. We mill 3. Nothing crazy. We cited out the average, so even though we mill 3 monsters, it's like, doesn't really matter. Main phase 2, sets the book, passes the turn. Here, we pick up a Monarch, which this deck is dense with. We have a lot of really good draws at this point. We can pick up Lad, we can pick up any one of our 5 Monarchs, or we can pick up, like, Debris or Quick Draw. So we have a solid, like, 10 draws that are really insane here. Even more if you count like Gores and Trag as just like beat sticks that help us here. And then on top of that, like Lonefire and Dandy are very good because they make the Titanial really, really hard to deal with. So we had a solid like 15 really good draws here. And basically, once you have Treeborn down and you have Titanial in play, every single draw in your deck is good. That's how it feels. Treeborn comes back. We rise the target his back row. He chains it on the Dark Greffer. I wanted to hit like a dead back row and force him to draw that again. Unfortunately, it didn't end up being the case. It could have also been Torrential, but in the case of Torrential, like, I wanted to make sure and hit it. And another reason I didn't want to target the Greffer is because let's say it's his second bottomless, right? Let's say I Ryza and it's the second bottomless, he bottomlesses. I want to be able to attack over the Greffer and deal damage, because that puts him down to 2,900, which means I can special summon back Treeborn Frog, attack for 100. He's forced to drop Gores. I can run over the Gores. He has a 100/100 token, but now the Titanial is a lethal threat. And yeah, so it's better to target the back row here than the monster because it lets us play through the Gores that we know about. Anyway, he books his monster. We attack over it, and we attack directly for 24. I figured he has 1 card in hand. He has 1 top deck. He does have a Plague Engrave, but we have a Crow, and we have a Torrential in case he has Dark Armed, so I think this is safe. He's forced to drop the Gores now, or else it will forever rot in his hand. We set the Torrential, we pass. If he has Caius, it's a little annoying, but we're trading like 3 for 2, and then we have the initiative. Caius would be the most annoying, I think. Yeah, probably, yeah. Anyway, he summons Armageddon Knight, which is totally fine for us. He sends Sirocco. He activates Plague, stacks. We have Crow for it, which is amazing. He switches the Gores. He attacks the Ryza, and then passes a turn. We make an error on one of these following turns. Anyway, we pick up Raikou, which is nice. I didn't need to set the Raikou here, but I figured it'd be fine. I attack over the Armageddon Knight because we're setting up for like a game shot at some point. If he ever doesn't attack the Raikou. Like, he basically has to attack the Raikou, because if it is a Raikou, I can flip it, pop one of his monsters, attack over one of them, and then attack directly with Raikou for game. Here he goes for attack the set monster, and I make a huge error. Because the Gores is attacked, it can't switch to defense. So what I should have done was actually pop his token. And then I can put him in a checkmate situation where Titanial attacks over Gores, he drops to 100. If he ever commits to the board ever again, I just Torrential, and then I Treeborn Frog attack for game. So I put him in a checkmate situation if I pop the right thing here, but I popped the wrong thing. I popped Gores because I just wanted it to be, I wanted it to be harder for him to Dark Armed, but then I checked his grave and I was like, oh shit, he can actually just Vayu banish Sirocco and be at exactly 3. So this is a huge fucking choke. I should have popped his token, for sure. For sure, popped the token here. That was like big misplay on my part. Almost game losing misplay. But he doesn't have Dark Arm, so it's okay. He specials out Armed Wing in defense to defend his life total. Here, we just summon the Dandelion, making it very difficult, again, for him to deal with the Titanial. Like I said, once Titanial's in play, your whole deck is a good draw. Titanial attack over the token, pass the turn. I should have probably attacked over the Armed Wing to keep him off Dark Armed, but Dark Arm doesn't really do anything here anyway. He specials it, we Torrential, and it's like, it's fine. Anyway, he goes Burial, returns his guys, activates his dude. I also didn't want him to have a chance to, like, I don't know, use this somehow in the grave. I don't fucking know. I probably should have attacked over that, though. He goes Colossal Fighter, we Torrential. The My Body as a Shield draw was pretty bad from him because he's at 200, so this doesn't really work. He makes an Armor Master, and we do lose our Titanial, again, because I messed up that whole sequencing with the which card to pop with Raikou and stuff, and then which card to attack over, but it's all the same. This attacks, yeah, had I also not left the Armed Wing in play, he couldn't have made the Synchro into Colossal play, and he would have just been kind of stuck. He would have been, I think he would have been forced to go for, like, I don't know what he would have done. I think he would have been forced to, like, burn his Vayu. Yeah, so definitely a misplay not attacking with the Armed Wing. Anyway, We do pick up Cyber Valley, so yeah, we're able to just Cyber Valley, banish the token, and then we draw our win con, which is debris. We foolish send Dandy, get 2 more tokens. He has 1 more top deck, which didn't do anything to Titanial, so there's a good chance it doesn't do anything to Debris Dragon. So he attacks a token, sets back row, passes, and we pick up an even better win con, which is Caius. We can just Caius his monster, and even if it is bottomless, I mean, we just straight up win him off the burn damage. So yeah, that was a crazy game. That was a crazy game. There's a lot of play error on my part. There was a lot of play error on my opponent's part, particularly with that Dust U-turn and the way he sequences back rows. But yeah, it just goes to show that you really can't count out quick draw in these games, and you can't count out Titanial even though you see it in the hand. You're like, oh, that's a brick. I don't think so. I don't think it's that much of a brick. I'm gonna be honest. The card is really, really good. Anyway, this game we're going second, but we open up with Heavy Storm, so you can't complain really. And we also open up with Soul Exchange, that's the reason we have it in the deck, is to improve our going second hands. He goes for Allure of Darkness. He banishes Gale. He goes ahead and sets a monster, sets background, passes. We pick up Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer, which is very good here. And I go for a very uncommonly made synchro. I think it's one of the more underrated synchros in the game, which is Turbo Warrior. So I use Quick Draw, I pitch the token, and then I summon out Turbo Warrior. Now I could make Drill here, right? Oh, I forgot to mention. For Game 3, I sided out an additional Fader, an additional Raikou, and I brought in 2 more Dust Tornadoes to help deal with Royal Oppression, because he knows what we're on now. So yeah, I brought in the Dust Tornadoes. They can also help snipe deck dev, which, again, he brings in now, knowing that we're not playing heroes. So we synchro into Turbo Warrior, and the reason we make this guy is because he can attack over Raikou pretty effectively. He has this really fun line of text that says he cannot be targeted by the effects of level 6 or lower monsters. This effect right here makes him godly in some matchups. Like, versus Glads, they can't out him. They have to use trap cards or back row to out him. They have no, like, main deck outs besides traps and spells, basically. Their monsters don't deal with this card naturally. And then versus, like, Monarchs, Frog decks, they need enemy controller or brain control to deal with him because none of the Monarchs can target him. And then versus Vayu Turbo and even the Mirror sometimes, it's really good because Raikou, Gale cannot target it, Caius cannot target it. So it's just a very annoying card for them to deal with. On top of that, if I attack big synchro monsters, I can have their attack, which is kind of the secondary effect of this card. The most important part of this card is that he can't be targeted by Raikou. So he lets you attack pretty freely into stuff like this. If they do have a Raikou, they can pop our token, but like, who cares? Like, I'm pretty happy taking that trade. So yeah. Also, he's big enough to get over Caius and Armed Wing if they've already resolved. So that's another big draw for this card in this matchup. They draw, they pass the turn, and now, again, like I said in Game 2, once I know about your Gores, which you can see he does have, once I know about it, it becomes a mulligan. And this cost my opponent the game again. He honestly probably should have just sided out Gores. Honestly. After how poorly it performed in Game 2, he should have sided it out. Especially because he needs to stick these cards to ever have a chance. And he gets Gores minded. Like, you can't just pass the turn. You can't just pass the turn with an open board. Like, you can't do that. Like, I'm gonna know you have Gores and just not attack you, and then you're still stuck, and then eventually you're gonna have to discard cards from your hand. Like, I don't have to attack you. There's nothing in the rules that say I have to attack you directly and proc your Gores. I can just make that card dead, and I can make you fall even further behind on board, which is exactly what happens here. Because he doesn't have that Royal Oppression down, we are able to go Lone Fire into Titanial, and now we're crushing. Yeah, I mean, this is just insane. Again, if he had a back row, I would never go for the Titanial. That being said, I'm not sure what I would have done if he had set the back row. Would I have attacked into Deep Prison? Maybe. Who knows? Would I have summoned Kaiku, attacked? I'm not really sure what I would have done. I'm not really sure. I probably would have just swung with Turbo Warrior, tried to force something, but I don't know. It's kind of it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one, had he said it. Anyway, he picks up Deep Prison, which is laughably bad now that we have Titanium plus Lone Fire. So he's basically forced to summon this Sirocco, attack over my Lone Fire to get rid of one of my negates, and then he sets that Deep Prison and passes. Again, it's really awkward him having this Gores and not being able to use his Royal Oppression to the fullest effect. Like, that is really awkward, and part of the reason why I said he should have definitely sided this card out. We pick up Phoenix Wing Windblast, which is just a great card to have in your hand at any given moment. We summon Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer, and I attack with Turbo Warrior. This is the best card to attack with at this point because Kaiku will floodgate his Vayu and his Sirocco. I take a huge gamble here that it's not Mirror Force, by the way. But if it was Mirror Force, like, summon Kaiku's not even that great anyway, post-board or post-battle phase, because he'll still have Sirocco to force my Wind Blast, which is really ugly. Then he's drawing the Sirocco again, and he can kill the Kaiku eventually. So the way I see it is, like, I'm just going to take the gamble he doesn't have Mirror Force. It's so much better for me if I do this. And We'll see how it goes. So I attack with the Turbo Warrior, and I'm like, if he has D Prison, I just won't negate it. And I'll have Titanial plus Kaiku left over, and that's just great. Turbo Warrior's already gotten its value for me. If he does have D Prison, then, or if he doesn't have D Prison, then I just won't attack with either of my other monsters, in case it is D Prison and he was holding it for the other monsters. So yeah, we attack over it for 500. We get our +1. We set the Wind Blast and we pass. He picks up Dark Grepher, and he makes a really interesting play. Sets the Dark Grepher, which throws me off a lot. It's actually like, I actually think this is a good play here, because he's trying to set up for his Dark Arms by just setting a Dark. And then he's going to have a turn where he goes like Dark Arms, attack something, I'm assuming. But honestly, it's like so bad for him at this point, because like, what can you do? You can't activate Dark Armed under Kaiku. You can't activate Vayu. I guess he could like, I don't even know. I don't even know what he could do. But he forces my Wind Blast here, which is good. We go to the battle phase. I attack with Turbo Warrior. After Declaration, I Phoenix Wing Wind Blast, target his monster, pitching the Soul Exchange, put the monster back on top of the deck, and because of replay rules, he can no longer deprison. So we replay, attack directly with Turbo Warrior, and he can't deprison here because it's like no longer the window where he can. He takes 25, and his Gores becomes even more invalidated. I set the Raikou, and now he actually has a really, really good turn. I mean, like he can actually totally come back from this game and beat us. So he takes a really long time to think. I'm gonna let it play in real time for a little bit. He takes a really long time to think, to the point where I'm not gonna make you guys sit through this. To the point where I said play. I think it was like 4 or 5 minutes, and I was like, you need to play the game. Like I get it. It's a really tough situation. You lose the game next turn if you don't make the right play. But like, you can't spend 4 or 5 minutes. That's a slow play warning. Like in any tournament setting, that's a slow play warning. Honestly, I think it's like, what, 2 minutes, a minute and a half is a slow play warning. So I was very generous. Anyway, he goes Dark Grepher, pitch special Dark Grepher, and he pitches the Caius. This motherfucker clung to Gores like he was going to save his life. Like I wasn't playing around it for the last 30 minutes of the match. Yeah, he definitely should have pitched the Gores. So the way this hand works is if he pitches the Gores to special summon Dark Grepher, he special summons out Dark Armed Dragon. He sacrifices Dark Grepher for Caius. Caius target Titanial. Titanial is forced to negate. Dark Armed Dragon attacks over Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer. Dark Armed Dragon can then pop the Turbo Warrior and the Raikou, and we are left with nothing. Turbo Warrior can be targeted by Dark Armed Dragon because it says level 6 or lower monsters. Dark Armed Dragon is level 7. So had he pitched the Gores here, he would have broken our entire board and probably beat us this game. As it stands, he pitches the Zacchaeus instead, still like just fucking tripling down on Gores. Like this card has done nothing for him the entire match. It's so like weird tunnel vision, you know? So he pitches specials Dark Grepher, special summons Dark Armed Dragon, attacks over the Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer, but now what? You know, like now what? You trade Dark Arm for the Titanial, but okay, like I'm happy about that, you know? Like that's good for me. Like now I have Raikou, I have Turbo Warrior, I have Future Fusion, I have everything. I'm just crushing it here. Raikou flip, pop the back row. I know about the Gores, so I'm never going to attack into it until I win. I attack with Turbo Warrior over Dark Grepher, after I Future Fusion, of course. Send the Mally, send the Treeborn. Attack over Dark Grepher, deal 800 damage. No need to play into the Gores here. Absolutely zero need to play into the Gores. Don't do it. Pass the turn. And I knew about the Gores too because he just passed with an open board that one turn. He picks up a Caius, which he can try to go for, but this Caius into this board doesn't do anything because, again, you can't target Turbo Warrior with Caius. So he goes for the Armed Wing, but I'm like, in case he drew Plague, I have to Crow here because if he drew Plague, then he makes an 8-star and I kind of lose. So I had to Crow the Vayu, which is, it's annoying, but like at this point, like Dark Armed is gone. So what could I possibly lose to? Yeah, I attack for 200 here. He drops Gores on the 200 because he has to, because he knows I'm not going to attack for 25. And then I attack over the token. Main phase 2, I actually make a very interesting play. So sometimes you'll be winning a game. You'll be dominating a game, right? Like this entire game, I've outplayed my opponent like crazy. And on top of that, I've been dominating in terms of board presence. And I'm slated to win this game. Now, there's a small percentage chance that you can lose this game, right? And that's when you get to this point in the game. This is where people sometimes choke and sometimes make mistakes. What needs to happen is when you've gotten to this point, you're like, okay, I am winning on every front. You need to think about in your brain, what can I possibly lose to? The last game, or the last turn, I DD crowed the Vayu because I'm like, he probably doesn't have Plague. But if he does, I do lose. So I'm going to DD crow it just to be safe. And that's basically what happens at this point in the game, is like, you have to play around the stuff that could potentially be, like the crazy tiny 1% chance stuff, right? So on this turn, I actually, I sacrifice for Caius, obviously, but the first thing I do is I actually banish from Malicious. And the reason I do this is because I want to lock my own board, so that if Absolute Zero were to come out next turn, I don't lose to a top deck Torrential Tribute, or a Torrential Tribute that he's been sandbagging. So I lock my own board so that I don't unintentionally or mandatorily play into a top deck Torrential Tribute. I have command of the game now. The one way I could potentially lose, which is top deck Torrential Tribute, is now completely off the table, and I'm good to go. So I banish the Gores, I deal 1,000, he draws Bottomless, and he loses. Had he drawn Torrential there, he would have been totally fine. We bring out the Absolute Zero, and then it would blow up our whole board, unless we lock our own board there. It's not a very intuitive play. It's not something a lot of people would have made, but yeah, no, it's definitely the correct play there to lock your own board, which is crazy. So, again, I think Quick Draw it's a solid deck. I think it's a good deck. I think one of the best ways to play this deck is with Soul Exchange. It improves your Titanial. It improves like your high Monarch counts. It lets you play cards like Light and Darkness, which are very strong. And it can also like just help you going second against some of the more aggressive decks in the format, like Blackwings and stuff. But I think as a whole, this deck is going to struggle with Blackwings in testing versus particularly the Dark Gref or the Swedish or the hybrid Blackwings, whatever you want to call it, versus that deck. This deck suffers. This deck suffers for sure, and it just doesn't have that sort of like ability to play around deck dev without Royal Decree. So you either have to be playing Decree Consecrated, or I don't think you can play this deck at the national event. I mean, you're just gonna lose to a field full of Blackwings. And then on top of that, I think this deck has a pretty bad matchup against the Gemini deck, which is obviously very popular as well. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below, if you've been playing Quick Draw or if you've tested Soul Exchange. The most recent topping lists of Quick Draw did play Soul Exchange as well, so I just want to say that there is merit to it, not only from my own personal testing, but from the people who have performed with it as well. So I'll see you guys in the next vid. Peace.